Welcome preppers, welcome to Goshen Prepping. Time is short. Happy Wednesday to you. And we're going to talk about time is short as far as things that are coming in this country, in this world, and we need to be prepared for this. Stay through this video and I'll explain why, because I think there's actually a deeper meaning to a lot of things that are happening right now that you need to understand what's coming. And this is all flat out going to impact both you and me. But there's a paradigm shift in society. And I want you to understand the true definition of a paradigm shift. This is important. An important change that happens when the usual way of thinking about or doing something is replaced by a new and different way. Now, understanding this concept is important, especially in today's discussion. Stick with this, you'll see this. We are now in a new normal, and this is actually a new term that's been popping up over the last couple of years. However, we're not talking about necessarily the pandemic pushing this in, but we're actually seeing a conventional way of thinking that's been historically taken place in the United States, other countries too, has been permanently changed, or at least is being permanently changed into a new way of thinking. The conventional way of being an adult has changed. In fact, kids now even say, oh, look, I have to adult today. Actually, not even kids, but adults are saying this. I have to adult today. When that used to be like the standard. You be an adult and you do what you need to. And I hate to classify these things. I actually hate to classify like certain ages of groups as far as the way they think mentally speaking, their mentality. But I think in this situation, we have no other choice because my generation, or I'm going to go ahead and put it, the older generations were harder workers, historically speaking. That's the way I see it anyway. And I'm not even talking about necessarily just working hard or working long hours, but more specifically, I see the older generations as actually having goals, aspirations, shot for the stars. They actually have motivations in their careers and actually even having a career and having a way of life and doing what they could for their family to actually have a nice home, nice car, etc. And all this stuff has changed to now we're talking about, oh, you know what? Let's just do the bare minimum. Let's barely get by with what we need to. So there's a term floating around in sociologist circles called kidulting or kidults. The rise of kidults and their infantile fascinations. This is interesting. And it talks about as far as like what we've seen specifically during this Christmas season. You know, they go and talk about Ukraine and stuff, which is actually not quite there. But I do want to look at this first paragraph. It says, though there is a ridiculous aspect of the kidult, he or she is not to be laughed at or to be otherwise dismissed. This Christmas season, the kidults accounted for 1/4 of all toy sales. Even worse, they made their purchases, got many of them gift wrapped, took them home and put them under their tree on Christmas Day. They took them out from under the tree, granted it's their own presents, opened them with great delight. And look what I got. And the kidults actually have a great fondness for cartoons, Star Wars, Legos, etc., etc. Long story short, we're not seeing the adults adulting. We're not seeing the adults doing it they need to, instead of actually having a fascination, refusing to grow up. They spend their time with toys. And you know what I'm talking about. Well, hopefully you do anyway. This is actually the new trend we're seeing. They spend their time with toys, fantasy and superhero movies, even sometimes wearing the costumes, buying countless fandom memorabilia, spending countless hours on video games, immersing themselves into that world. And now I'll be the first to tell you there's nothing wrong. In fact, I actually encourage you to be young at heart. You know, when my kids actually want to play a game or something like that, I'll sit down and play with them. Not that I enjoy it. I just enjoy spending the time with them and being a dad and being with them, you understand? But even with my kids, I'll tell them, listen, there's nothing wrong with taking time off. There's nothing wrong with actually spending a little bit of time doing these things. But the key word is a little bit of a time. You don't want to have your whole life centered around these things. But the paradigm shift specifically we're talking about is taking the culture from us having goals, the older generations, a career, a family, and now spending the majority of the time. And that's the key in this fantasy land. And there's the problem. That's what I see anyway. And I think we need to take a look at this problem specifically. They're actually less and less about a career and a family. They're less and less about being driven adults. And instead being more and more centered, self-centered, I should say, on experiences. I mean, it's the age of the selfie. Even like commercials on television constantly point how everybody is all about me, 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 me. And this problem started a while ago, and it's actually getting worse and worse to the point where we are today. And I don't mean a problem specifically with the individual, although I'm sure that happens sometimes too. There's a problem with society overall, and it shows. The more these kidults dive into their fantasy, which they spend more and more time in their fantasy, the more they believe anything they're told. Because if they can actually believe that there's some kind of superhero flying around with a jetpack suit who does all these things and has like superhuman powers, they really start believing anything can happen. And they actually become passionate about this. They believe things, and now you'll see where I'm getting at. They believe grocery stores, they'll always have food. They believe meat comes from a cardboard box at a restaurant. They believe the government will always take care of them, of course. They believe anything they're told, medically speaking, and if you disagree with them, then you're wrong. And they believe completely that the government has their best interest in mind. So what's the problem? I mean, to each their own, right? Sure, we all can do what we want to do. However, they also believe that everything in this world they should get just because they exist and they deserve it. So you and me, we're growing up in this older generation where we believe we work hard for things, work hard for our possessions that we have, that nice home and nice car. Well, they deserve that too. You don't deserve it. You should share with them because they should have it too. And that's why we see ridiculous amounts of looting and everything that take place now as well. The crimes are going through the roof because they believe, you know what, this corporation doesn't deserve all this stuff. We deserve it too, just because we exist. So more and more, this paradigm shift is coming into fruition. And more the adults are taking over. And why is that? I mean, think about this. More and more, the older generations are dying off. And of course, it's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. We're seeing more and more of these adults screaming that they want their things and they want it now. And we're seeing this paradigm shift taking us from what we believed America stood for into this new, I'm going to go ahead and say it, socialist country. They believe everything should be shared because it's what's fair and just. Doesn't matter if you worked hard for it. Doesn't matter if you spent countless years working your way up the ladder or doing everything you could to be able to provide for your family. It doesn't matter. They deserve to have it too. Thing is, socialist and Joe Biden call this utopia. It is flat out socialism and it is communism. Everyone wants a job, but no goals specifically. No ownership of property. You minimally work, spend your days barely getting a job done, and then spend most of your good time, by the way, being a adult, heading off into that fantasy land. And let's not worry about the state of the world. We're already heading in that direction. In fact, we're already quite a ways into that direction. And the adults are all on board for this. Next thing you know, we have Grandpa Biden, our true leader. You get to sit on his lap, ask for free tuition. Oh, wait, another stimulus check on the way. And all you have to do is, possibly sometimes have your hair sniffed and obey. Do what you're told. While the previous generations would shoot for the best and have lofty goals and striving to meet them, today's generation instead is about raising the minimum wage. I want more for doing less. Do you see the paradigm shift? We went from a society focused on bettering ourselves into a culture and doing the minimum, making America amazing, the country it was, to now the government will take care of everything for you. And all you have to do is sit back and relax. That's where we're heading. That's where we're actually almost there.